Now, Cosatu wants all workers dismissed for not vaccinating to be reinstated. The Labour Federation is challenging COVID-19 vaccine mandates. It says while it supports vaccination, it can't stand by as people are fired for non-compliance. For more on this, we're joined now by Cosatu's parliamentary coordinator, Matthew Parks. Mr. Parks, good morning and thank you very much for your time. We understand that you'll be challenging this mandatory COVID-19 vaccination at a national policy level. Just talk to us about this. Good morning, Mr. Parks.
Hi, I can't hear you.
Okay, lovely. Can you just talk us through your challenge, at least now that you want to challenge this at a national policy level?
Yes, no, good morning. Apologies, I couldn't hear you for a second. Look, for us as Cosatu and our affiliates is a very sensitive and a delicate issue. We've supported our affiliates on the different sectors of the economy have supported the COVID-19 vaccine. We've believed it's been critical to saving lives, to saving jobs. It's been critical to reopening the economy, to getting out of the lockdowns. But we've also, as a trade union federation and our unions have said we cannot support any worker being dismissed. We are a constitutional democracy. We're a very noisy democracy, and that's fine. We think the best way to convince people to vaccinate is to engage with them, to educate them, to address their fears and their concerns. But we've always been opposed to any employer dismissing any worker. We don't think that's the right way to do it. We think that actually just poisons the water. It muddies a very sensitive and often a divisive issue across the world. And it just distracts from the real message, which is to encourage people to vaccinate, but to protect themselves and their families. So we're quite pleased that SASPO, our union in the banking and financial sector, has taken up this cudgels with Standard Bank. We support their call to reinstate these 40 workers at Standard Bank who were dismissed for not vaccinating, where we think that because Standard Bank has rescinded its dismissal approach to vaccinations, they should heed that call. It's a progressive call. And we can't support any worker being dismissed in an economy where you have an unemployment rate of 45%, where workers will struggle to find jobs. Retrenching or dismissing a worker is in effect condemning them to poverty. They will not be able to feed their families or take the school. They may even lose their home. So we think it's the right thing to do. And of course, we're out of the state of disaster. We want to encourage people to still vaccinate. We're quite worried about the low booster take-up rates amongst society. But again, we should be encouraging everybody to be reinstated, those who are dismissed. We should not be condemning anybody to unemployment, not in this economy.
But how difficult would it be or easy would it be to have those people reinstated? Because in some companies, you find that they've now hired others in those positions. And really, if it were to be taken to court, some could say they were fired at a time when we were in the state of disaster. So the conditions that prevailed then warranted their dismissal, at least according to their company policy. So would it really be as easy as one thinks it might be?
Well, it would be quite easy. I mean, in the case of Standard Bank, these are recent dismissals from April, so it was 2 months ago, 3 months ago. It's quite easy. For a large employer like Standard Bank with more than 20,000 employees, it's not difficult to employ 40 people, but it's also the right thing to do. The worst thing we can do is to leave people unemployed, to lose their homes, their cars, their possessions, etc. We can't do that. But also, there was a CCMA which ruled against an employer for dismissing a worker who hadn't vaccinated, because the directives from the Department of Labour, which we had discussed at NEDLAC, never provided for anybody to be dismissed. They allowed employers to have a vaccination policy, but it had to be based upon the assessment of that company's needs, the exposure of different workers in different parts of their company to COVID-19 and to customers and so forth. It also had to allow for exemptions, be it for medical or religious or constitutional grounds. It had to look at alternative arrangements for workers, whether it's digital or remote working in the company, whatever alternative plans could be put in place. But we were always very clear as Labour, and even the president of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, was quite clear that no one should be dismissed. We encourage people to do this voluntarily. We support vaccinations, but let's not dismiss people. That's not a helpful way to do it. So we think companies should do it, and this is the right thing to do. And look, it's in the company's interest. Companies like Standard Bank shouldn't want to have such negative headlines. And these workers, they've invested in them. They've invested in their training and their skills. They have a valuable contribution to make to Standard Bank, to other companies. So it's in the company's own interest to re-employ them and to focus on rebuilding this economy.
Some might commend you for this position now, while others might say perhaps it would be an easy victory now, given that at the beginning, at the height of the pandemic, some were critical of the organized labor as a whole, to say you were very quiet when people were being dismissed and it was left to individual employers to decide what they want to do. What would you say to those that criticize you and say you're pushing this position now and more vocal because, well, COVID numbers have declined or decreased substantially, so it really becomes somewhat of an easy victory? If you're going to fight this, even challenge it with certain companies or even government, they would be more agreeable. They would listen to you and say you are right given the numbers. What would you say to that criticism?
Look, it's a part of democracy to criticize, so we get criticized all the time, whether it's right or wrong. That's neither here nor there. But we have been active on the vaccine front from day one. In fact, we criticized government in the beginning of last year for not rolling out the vaccine campaign fast enough. We had extensive engagement at NEDLAC, in the government vaccine committee as well, where we participated to helping roll out the vaccination campaign. Our unions across the economy, from health workers to the clothing and textile sector to the banking sector, did a lot of work at the ground to encourage workers to vaccinate, but also to tell employers, let's not dismiss any worker who doesn't want to do it. Let's address their concerns. Let's see how can we resolve their concerns. And hence we put in the regulations with government and business at NEDLAC that there must be engagement with labor and workers on the ground in the company when it comes to vaccination. We had a lot of discussions. I think if we did 1,000 interviews over the past year on the vaccinations, it could be an undercount. But I think for us, we're not worried about criticism. Our issue is, as a trade union federation, to reinstate these workers, to help reduce unemployment, to help save these workers' jobs, to help ensure that they can take care of their families and they can avoid losing their homes. And that for us is the critical thing. We think it is going to be a difficult fight, but we have to do it. SASPO and our banking sector has been engaging on this issue. Zakawa in the retail sector has been very active on the issue. SACT in the clothing sector have been quite active with the issue, and across other parts of the economy in the state, etc. So for us, it's not the worry is not about criticism. The worry is about, can we save these workers? Can we get them back in their jobs? And I think we do appreciate that COVID-19 has been a learning experience for everybody. There has been mistakes by all of us across the world and in South Africa. But I think we've learned from it, and I think it's really going to help us prepare in future for future pandemics, which could easily come. And I think it's helped us to understand a better approach to public health care. There's been a lot of consensus actually between government, business and labor about how to manage such issues. But of course, there has been differences. And of course, we have differed with business sharply on dismissing workers. But I think for us, the bottom line is, let's get these workers back to work. Let's conclude this chapter on a positive note, and let's not leave anybody unemployed. That for us is the bottom line.
Hopefully we can conclude this chapter on a positive note. Matthew, thank you very much for your time. That was Cosatu's Matthew Parks.